Chapter 2, Hedgehog Soup. Chisel walked on the beach trail under a beautiful canopy of leafy tree branches high overhead. He breathed deeply and sighed happily. If I can get to the lighthouse on the beach, they might have a boat I can sail to Volcano Island in, he thought. Chisel was constantly experimenting, trying to make his own gum. Today, as he walked down the beach trail, he tried a mixture of taffy and peanut butter, but he only ended up with a huge, sticky, messy glob of something that stuck his teeth together and caused drool to flow out of his mouth and down his chin. Just then a couple of deer passed him. They were disgusted. "What a dirty little beast," one of them said. That night Chisel camped under a big old maple tree, and in the morning he boiled up some of the tree's sap into maple syrup to put on his pancakes. After washing up, he stored the extra syrup in his cooking pot and brought it along as he continued walking. At about 3 in the afternoon, he knew that he was getting close to the beach, but something seemed wrong. Then he realized that the birds were not chirping anymore in the trees around him. Then he heard a terrible growl, and out of the bushes jumped the meanest-looking bobcat Chisel had ever seen. "Well, aren't you a plump little hedgehog?" Bobcat said as he looked at Chisel's body from head to foot. Bobcat laughed. "Do you know that I have not had hedgehog soup in many, many years? I have the salt, I have the pepper, I have the water, but there is one ingredient that I have been missing." "What is that?" asked Chisel. "Hedgehog!" Bobcat yelled and then started laughing. He patted Chisel on the head, being in a very jolly mood. "I'm sorry you are the main ingredient, but that is the recipe, and since it is dinner time, I am going to eat you." After thinking for a second, Chisel said, "You wouldn't want to eat a hedgehog. With these spines on my back, I would be very uncomfortable in your mouth." Bobcat replied, "I was fooled by that trick last time a hedgehog came through here, and I promise myself not to be fooled by it again." Chisel nodded his head, pressed his lips together, and replied, "Well then, I was wondering if before you eat me, I could eat one last meal. This would be nice for me, and it would plump me up a little for you." Bobcat thought it was the nice thing to do, so he helped Chisel gather some firewood to cook his meal. Soon Chisel had some golden brown pancakes cooking on the frying pan. Chisel scooped the pancakes onto his plate, then he got his knife and fork out and cut them up, watching how longingly Bobcat was eyeing the meal. "Oh, gee, I almost forgot the maple syrup," he said. "Maple syrup? What's that?" Bobcat asked. "I didn't know you were supposed to put something on pancakes." Chisel poured the thick syrup heavily on his pancakes. The smell floated through the air and made the wood smell like a pancake restaurant. Bobcat's eyes slowly opened and shut as he smelled the wonderful aroma. Chisel ate the first pancake slowly, savoring each bite and pouring extra syrup on each piece. Finally, it was too much for Bobcat. "Excuse me for disturbing you, but I was wondering if maybe I could have just one bite." "Are you sure it won't spoil your appetite?" Chisel asked. No, I'll just have one bite," Bobcat assured him. Bobcat ate that first bite and could not believe how incredible the fresh maple syrup tasted. He then asked if he could have just one more bite, and then a few more. Pretty soon, he had eaten 19 whole pancakes and sat so stuffed that he could not eat another bite. "Are you sure you don't want any more?" Chisel asked, and lifted some more pancakes up to Bobcat's face. "Oh, please put them away. I think I'll throw up if I see any more food," Bobcat insisted. While Bobcat sat, leaning against a tree in agony at being so full, Chisel cleaned his pots and pans and repacked his pack. "I'm sorry the hedgehog soup didn't work out," Chisel said as he put on his backpack and stood up. He shrugged his shoulders and said goodbye. Bobcat just lifted his hand a little and grunted, too full to say any more. Meanwhile, Mr. Otter had told the mean minks that the last place he saw Chisel was heading toward the beach. So after quickly packing, the 4 mean mink brothers had set off and now were walking down Pillafefer Road looking for Chisel. "I'm going to crunch that little hedgehog when we find him," said Milford. "He disappeared from the big city last year, but now we know where he is." After continuing to walk a little while, Chisel started smelling the fresh salt air of the ocean. He smiled and started singing to the trees, and also to his toes that got a little bored on his hikes. And as he sang, he leaned forward and leaned back. He leaned right and shuffled his feet sideways in an awkward-looking dance. As he danced and walked, he sang. Finally, Chisel passed the last tree and came out on the sandy shore. It was a beautiful sight. The high clouds had turned an orangish pink, and the sun looked so large as it was setting. He watched it steadily sink until it was out of view. He could barely see the lighthouse on Dilper's Point, and decided he would camp on the beach and in the morning hike over to the point. He gathered some driftwood, started a little fire, and then ate a peanut butter sandwich as he watched the flames. Soon the stars appeared, twinkling brightly in the black sky, and he felt himself relax. If he had known what would happen the next day, he would not have relaxed so much, though. But he didn't. So after a while, Chisel lay back on his blanket with his hands behind his head and looked up at the moon. He smiled, closed his eyes, and wandered off to sleep.